Children can develop an unhealthy body image at a really young age, younger than you might think. And that is why it's important to be mindful of how your conversations and your behaviors affect how your kids feel about their own bodies. Our next guest is the author of a new book, I'll Start Again Tomorrow, and Other Lies I've Told Myself. Welcome to Noonday, Sonia Jhas. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And talking about this very, very, very important issue that I think if we start thinking about this in the right way, we can stop these body image issues as we're raising these kids. So let's first talk about why it was important for you to write this book.
You know, I think like so many women out there, I spent so much of my youth on the hamster wheel of weight loss, on the wagon, off the wagon, convinced that happiness was 10 pounds away.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And if I could just get there, I'd arrive at happiness and my life would be set. As you know, not the way it goes.
It didn't work like that.
Didn't work like that. And through a lot of the, you know, the fundamental work of really not only reteaching myself the fundamentals of fitness and nutrition, like science, but also really digging through the mindset of what keeps us stuck in the vortex. I was able to find freedom on the other side, and it just felt so important for me to share that with others, because it was like, you're doing it all wrong. Please stop. You're not alone. We all do this to ourselves. These are the lies we tell ourselves.
And you know what's interesting? At 43, I finally have a better body image than I have had in years. But I still fall into these old categories where I think these things, and especially when I became a mom. And I was warned before my daughter was born, thank goodness, by smart, beautiful women in my life, to be careful about how I talk about myself. Why is it so important to model a positive body image?
I think it's the environment, right? We don't realize that we are cultivating every little nuance of how these children are approaching food, how they're reflecting on their bodies. And it's so critical now more than ever because, like, hello, social media, you know, like it is just another level of chaos that they're being bombarded with. And yes, we grew up with it as well with traditional media, but I think, you know, what we don't realize is that they're listening, they're feeling, they're taking everything that we're setting as that foundation, and we don't realize when it was just enough to sort of set that, you know, trajectory on a different path, for example.
So true. So what are some comments that we really need to be avoiding?
There's so much.
There's so many.
There's so many. But I think the biggest piece, you know, is first of all, it's like, what comments should we be avoiding? But it's also like, is there communication happening? I grew up in a household where I wasn't allowed to worry about things like my body because I was supposed to be focusing on other things. And so there was no dialogue in the house about what I was experiencing, what I was exposed to. Nobody approached the narrative with empathy or compassion. And I think the difference for us as mothers is that we know how bad it is. So rather than being like, oh, how do I tiptoe around? I think the first question is, how do we show up as human beings here, really wanting to engage, wanting to understand if that turmoil is starting earlier than we'd like. And then I think to be able to really focus the conversations on capacity, strength, potential, strength over size, right?
Strength
nourishment over the aesthetics. Really creating that mind-body connection so that the dialogue is about how do you feel? Right? Because when it matters what they feel, then there is an opportunity to be like, I don't feel so good though, and I don't really know why. I don't really know what that is, and I think that's where we can start to then really course correct our language, really suss out, you know, how should we be approaching the conversation, which is going to be different for every child.
And then when you can separate those feelings of body dysmorphia or body dislike from other feelings that we're having.
So huge, because it's so tangled.
Because it's so tangled. I mean, then maybe we can really start to help these younger girls and boys, everyone.
Everybody. I think everyone
body image issues.
Everyone is telling themselves the lies, right?
We're all telling ourselves the lies.
We're all lying is first and foremost the issue. But then the other piece of it, I think, also is just recognizing that, you know, the more that we can bring humanity back into the conversation, the more that we can not approach this as a, you know, one size fits all solution, the on the wagon, off the wagon, the all or nothing with our children.
Yes.
Now we've got an environment that we can work with, right?
Yes. And then I think sometimes the words are hard. You know, the other day I was standing in the bathroom getting ready and I was wearing, you know, a sports bra and I had eaten a big breakfast. And my son goes, Mom, why are you so fat? Because I was bloated. But he's a kid.
He's a kid.
You know, and I get it. So I was like, and then I just did a funny dance and told him how my body was beautiful, which my children absolutely loved and were horrified about.
I love that.
But how do we develop a positive body image for these kids? I mean, when these words are already out there, how do we bring it back and say, hey, it's okay that I'm bloated?
I actually love what you did, right? Like, I love what you did because it brought playfulness back to it. It brought a sense of confidence in the conversation, even though you weren't like, now listen, son, we don't call people fat.
Right.
Mommy's very proud of her body.
Yeah, right,
you know, that's when it becomes sort of like a square peg, round hole discussion. But in bringing that lightness back, being like, yo, man, I had a pretty big meal. You know, this is what bodies look like. Here we go.
You're
a little
welcome.
shaky shake. You're welcome. I think, again, it's like we're sending important messages through the words that we're using, but we're creating, again, that energy around it, as in, this is not taboo. You're allowed to make mistakes and talk about someone being fat, let's call it. But also, like, let's play around with it, let's feel good about it, and then let's change the language again. What are other options? What are other words that you can use that aren't going to be quite so jarring and negative and black and white, right?
So true.
You're doing it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am so grateful for you, and I'm so glad your book exists for helping us all. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking. Come back and visit us soon.
I'm ready. Just
right.
Toronto to Seattle. We're going to do it.
We're going to do it. We're going to get you frequent flyer miles.